Okay.
You know, again, just to add to that, Walter, I know that we have several long-range planning documents in the works with our Parks and Rec, with our transportation, with our facilities, and so there are a number of initiatives that may have been on staff's back burners that will stay there a while longer until such time as these long-range documents come forward for the council's consideration. So it's not just the Paradise Path that's been put on hold in those reports, but it's some other kinds of issues related to transportation planning, related to facilities and all of that. We're not moving forward because these plans, these that are developed by consultants for the most part, and with certainly staff's engagement, need to come forward yet. Wayne, you had a comment too?
Well, Margaret, I need to ask you about the new mission statement that was created. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, in 2011.
Correct.
It was never brought to the council for the council's okay. Why would you not, I mean, and you don't have to answer that, okay? It was because you didn't get the guidance to do that, and I understand that. But you have to understand that whether it's a task force or whether it's a commission, that you can't just go off and rewrite your mission statement to do what you think you need to do without getting the okay from the people that actually have to implement the policy.
Right.
One of the things in the mission statement that it talks about is a path with an access of a half mile of anywhere. I forget how it's verbalized, but it almost sounds like even outside the city limits.
Well, it wasn't intended to mean that. It was within a half mile of anybody's residence.
I've just had a little bit of concern about just going off and creating a new mission statement and without getting the okay.
Well,
that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I understand your concern. Dan happened to be at the meeting that we approved that mission, and
well, there's your.
And I mean,
I guess it's my fault.
Well, damn.
Should we take it out back?
Sure.
I mean, I guess I should have come and presented that to the city council, but no one gave me that.
Well, and as I said, Margaret, you don't need to make an excuse for it. It's just that's a concern, and the right guidance wasn't there, which can be in the future.
Right. We're well aware of the process now.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you know, my concern all along has been this fact that, well, it doesn't really, as you were saying, well, you don't think it belongs as part of the Parks Commission, and you don't think it belongs as part of the Transportation Commission. And so it floats around in this nebulous area and really doesn't have enough clout by the time things get water. I mean, you know, how many paths there were and how it got down to 4. So there's usually a city staff assigned to each commission. So if it was an independent commission, and you don't have a park staff assigned to it because it doesn't belong there, and you don't have a transportation staff assigned to it because it doesn't belong there, where does it belong? And that's unless the multimodal transportation plan then becomes part of the comprehensive plan, and then it comes under community development. But I can't figure out where it goes, which is why I have this concern about it not getting anywhere. And for task force, or whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it a subcommittee even, to be going on since 1994, that's almost 20 years. And I want to help get things accomplished, but the task force way isn't doing it, at least in my opinion at the moment. So where do you think it would fit? Who would you assign from where to that commission if it was a commission?
You know, that question might better be posed to administration. So,
Yeah.
Bill, do you have a comment about assigning staff to serve as liaisons to the various commissions?
I don't know.
Well, historically, it's been provided by Parks and Rec, and I don't see any reason why that would likely change. There are, and I guess if the question is posed, if this was formed as a new commission
Yep.
by the council,
Which you
who
said.
would be the department that would staff it? And traditionally, linear park and pathway systems are managed by parks departments. There are overlaps with transportation and public works. They work closely on projects together, but traditionally, those are managed by the Parks and Rec departments.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom?
Well, I was here watching the administrative committee last week, and I felt like the conversation kept missing the point, which is that the Moscow City Council wants to see the Paradise Path succeed, and we have some pretty broad goals for doing that. I think we get wound up and caught up in the verbiage of the name Paradise Path Task Force unnecessarily, and I think, so I'll take those in separate sections. I think the Paradise Path itself is oftentimes thought of as just the connection between the Chipman Trail and the Latah Trail, and while that's an important part of Paradise Path, it's not the only part. There's some north-south sections and that already exist, and there's some other little pieces in different parts of town. And then there are lots of places that we've talked about as someday parts of Paradise Path. So we have, this council has expressed much larger goals than just the connection between the Chipman Trail and the Latah Trail. So I think we need to move past thinking that it's done and that it's only that piece. I think the other part, the task force piece of it, task force doesn't need to mean ad hoc. It doesn't need to mean that we use it a few times and then throw it away. It's not, it's perhaps a misnomer that we call it task force when really it's been acting as a commission. And I don't really see a big difference between commission and task force. It's just that that's the name that's been given to us. If we think that there's a significant difference between task force and commission, I think we should just rename it as commission and move on and make the thing happen. I think we have a lot of work to do, and I don't want to get hung up on the name of it. Another thing I wanted to point out is that, as we've said a few times, there is a lot of work to be done. I think the biggest stumbling block recently is that we haven't been getting, quorums, or we've been, being held up for whatever reason. I'd say let's add more people to it and increase our expectations to make this thing happen and move on. I mean, if we've got 6 people or 8 people or 9 people that want to volunteer their time for the city of Moscow to make some really good things happen in this town, then let's say yes to that. I want to see this happen. I want to see people make this pathway work, not just as a transportation route, but as a park, linear park. I was on the Transportation Commission for 9 years, and I remember, and the other people that were on that with me were Walter and Dan, and I remember that we all felt frustration that our recommendations weren't moving fast enough to the city council and through the city council. I still think that we're not receiving and moving through recommendations very quickly from the Transportation Commission. I don't want to add more stuff to their plate. It doesn't make any sense to me that we would add more work to the Transportation Commission or Parks and Rec Commission for that matter. I don't think we're honoring their work well enough now as it is. So I'd like to see us, not collapse this into something, but maintain it. It's not like it's costing us a lot of money to maintain 6 volunteers in that role. And then I wanted to also point out that I think having a commission or task force or whatever we want to call it, and be able to boast that to foundations and other funding agencies that are interested in giving us money, and seeing that this city is so visionary and thoughtful that we have a citizen commission that is able to put energy into trying to improve this path system and make it work. I think that funders are excited by that and motivated to potentially give us more money. So I'd like to see that going. We've got great people there. I'd like to add to that and move it forward into a commission status. So that's what I would like to see us do tonight.
Tim?
Thank you. Well, I agree that paths and communities have a huge importance. When Kevin Lilly and one other Moscow staff person went to Portland and looked at how extensive and how important their pass system is. He brought that back in the form of a video and some good communication that I wasn't on the Paradise Path Task Force then. I presume he came to you guys. I know he came to Transportation and made his presentation there. So the importance, as Tom so eloquently just spoke about, of pass in all different sizes of communities, whether it's the city of Troy or Genesee or Moscow or Portland, I agree are important to the citizens of those communities. I know when the admin committee broached this subject a week ago, I had been yo-yoing back and forth about what to do with it, the task force, what to do with whether or not to dissolve it, whether or not to fold it into transportation, fold it into parks. I think I've come up and made my mind up since then. I think it's important that we have a whole other group of eyes, which this task force and perhaps a commission could give the city. So I think that's important. I'm going to support. I'll support a commission. I'll certainly support you guys remaining as a task force. I think it's very important.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
No, not yet.
You have a hand up?
We got more.
Mayor, if I may.
I see Dan's hand up back there. Dan?
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing that there's a lot of work to be done, but saying that pathways deserve their standalone commission is like saying sidewalks need their own commission or streets need their own commission by themselves. I think that, no offense to the former chairman of the Transportation Commission, but they seem to have moved to a more global thought process than we used to have. We thought streets, and then it started evolving into the sidewalks, and now I think it needs to evolve into the paths as well, because I think that it's considered, sidewalks and paths as more the multimodal part of the Transportation Commission. And I think we're not seeing things from Transportation Commission for the same reason we're not seeing the things from the Paradise Path Task Force at the moment, is because everybody's waiting for the big thing to get done. The multimodal transportation plan is hanging out there ready for everybody to see it and then act upon it. And I think that's probably part of why we don't see a lot right now is everybody's waiting for that to happen so they can act upon it. But again, like I say, there is a lot of work that could be done with the Paradise Path, but I do think that it could be part of the Transportation Commission because I think it is part of transportation in Moscow.
Wayne?
Well, as council liaison to the Transportation Commission, I was pleased to see that Nancy Nelson's here tonight. And I would like to ask Nancy a question, if you would permit her to come to the podium.
Absolutely. And as we've heard from some of our council members up here tonight, the Transportation Commission does a phenomenal job, and the global perspective is hugely important. I think if the question, Wayne, is will they do it, would they try their very best, I'm sure the answer will be yes. Nancy Nelson is...
Did I ask the question?
No, but I'm guessing that that's it. Please, go ahead.